The city of Rockville reveres its roots and relies on their mayor and council to lead the city. Each of the former mayors we spoke to has different philosophies of how to lead a city, but one common bond is their love of Rockville. John Freeland served as mayor from 1982 to 1985. Known for running the city like a business, economic development was a priority for Freeland. His passion for Rockville still continues today, and his mark on the city can be seen in the sister-city relationship and the formation of the Rockville City Police Department.
What have you been up to since you've been mayor of Rockville?
We moved to the Eastern Shore, to Ocean City, and spent nearly 10 years down there, and that was kind of a different kind of life in some ways, but very similar because I owned a place in the Century 1, and when I got there to live on a full-time basis in Century 1, why the board of directors decided that maybe it's time to have a full-time manager, resident manager. So I had my own little town of 165 units, and we had the tallest building on the beach, and we had all kinds of interesting experiences. Got involved with the Chamber of Commerce and the Rotary Club, and became the executive director of the Governor's Economic Development Committee. And we were trying to find ways to do things for the city of Ocean City, because at the end of the season, people used to say that you could fire a cannon down the coastal highway and you wouldn't hit anything. Well, we did all kinds of things like the Festival of Lights, and brought in things at both ends of the seasons to keep people in the city or bring people to the city at times other than beach time. As far as what we're doing now is kind of renewing old memories of Rockville. And when you ask about that, we could be here till the weekend, but I guess some of the things that really come to mind in thinking about coming and talking to you, one of the things that was upsetting to the town before I became part of the council and the mayor's position was that we were known for all of our parks. We had parks in every neighborhood throughout the city, but we had no real protection for the parks. And mothers and small children would go to our parks, and they'd get run off the parkland with young people that didn't have the same interest in the parks as the mothers and the children. So we heard this all over town, that we got to do something about the parks. Why should we pay taxes for something we can't use? And they were right. So we said, well, we'll look into it and we'll decide what to do. So we did. And what it boiled down to is we hired a person by the name of Chuck Wall, who people around town will know the name, and that is that he was working for the International Association of Chiefs of Police, and we said, tell us what to do as far as protecting our own residents. And so he proceeded to do an analysis and gave us a tremendous report right here in this very room, and convinced us that we probably would be smart to have our own police department. That was interesting. And so one thing led to another. The county came down on us like a ton of bricks because we were going to have a police department, and what were they going to do as far as the county police patrolling our streets and what have you. We worked for quite a while to get all the differences worked out, but we did start with about 7 people, and we hired Chuck Wall as our first chief of police. And I was delighted because we told people what we would do, and then we did it. We didn't go about things and tell this neighborhood, yes, we're going to do this, and that neighborhood, we're going to do that, and then go into office and do nothing. In fact, that was one of the reasons I got involved with City Hall in the first place, is that I would support people who ran for office, and they were going to do this, and they were going to do that. They'd get in office, and they'd have a short memory. So one day I said, Mother, I'm going to do it myself. And that's when I got involved, and the next thing you know, I was on the council. And so from that point on, I was happy to do the things that were oriented to the people that lived here. Not our agenda per se, but the agenda of the people that lived here. And as far as the city was concerned, we did in fact go out and start running the city in a business-like fashion. Now, you can't run it like a total honest business-like operation because you can't pay dividends. However, what you can do is you can lower taxes. And that's what we did. All the years that I served in the mayor and council, we lowered the taxes consistently. Boom, 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 boom. And we were proud of it. Now, there were good things, like we had an increasing tax base, which gave us more revenue. But at the same time, instead of just spending that, we looked at what we really needed, like our police department. We could afford to pay for it, and so we did. And we lived with the aggravation with the county once we did that, but it was our money. That's what our people wanted. That's what we did. And that we all agreed was the right thing to do. So that's one of the things that I really feel good about. Another thing was that I was really not oriented towards the Sister City program. I used to look at the budget and I'd see this number in the budget and I'd say, what are we getting for this money? Well, you know, we have someone come out from the German embassy and sit in a parade on Memorial Day, and some of our kids go over every once in a while on an exchange basis, and every once in a while we get a visitor from Pinneberg and all that kind of. Not for that money. I mean, let's be honest about it. So I was getting close to my military retirement, and it looked like I was never going to get a tour of duty in Germany or any place in Europe. I have been all over the Far East and all over the United States, but never to Europe. So I told my wife, before we retire, we're going to take advantage of our military status. We're going to Europe. And while we're in Europe, we're going to stop in Pinneberg. So we went ahead and did some things and got ready, let them know that we were going to be there at a certain time. They gave us a tremendous reception, and we had a great time. And then we had a meeting. We sat around with the Burgermeister and all of his council people and so on and so forth. And when I told them that what I was there for was to decide whether I was going to support the continuation of the sister city relationship. If we couldn't come up with some way to make it worthwhile, I was going to cut it out of the budget. Well, they just took gas over that. Oh, no, you know, that it's too good a program. We don't want to do it. I said, well, then what are you all doing here? And what can we do at home to bring this together? Because the two governments were working back and forth, and they really weren't doing a whole lot. It was nice stuff, fuzzy stuff. And so I came home, talked to the members of the council, and we said, hey, what we're going to do is we're going to create a task force. And we're going to let the task force decide what is the proper way to go about this. Well, that's when the business aspect of our thinking came into focus, and they said, well, what if we form a nonprofit corporation and have Pinneberg do the same thing? Let the two corporations set up a relationship, and the two governments support, not be involved in financing them or anything else, but support them in order to get recognition at both ends for all the things we could do. Well, let me tell you, that was a whole new ballgame. And I had no problem in supporting what we spent because we got tremendous back and forth relationships going. And we went to the 50th anniversary in Pinneberg a little while back and came to Rockville for the other half of the 50th year anniversary. And that's a warm spot in my heart. It came that close to being nothing. So I don't think that was a bad investment at all. And I keep in touch with them. In fact, we have Christmas presents already bought and ready to wrap up to send to them this coming year because we've done it for years. So it's, I think it was a real positive thing for the city.
John, you've been credited with being a champion of economic development and urban renewal. Can you talk a little bit about your thoughts on the current state of economic development in the city and also Town Square and how that has come about?
Well, there's no comparison between what is in existence now in downtown Rockville and what was here when first I moved to Rockville, and then the years that we put in to try to do something with the downtown area. But I would have to say that as far as the downtown area is concerned, there were too many years where we were looking to HUD money and doing things that were not in the best interest of Rockville, and there was no leadership coming from the mayor and council as far as I was concerned. And that was one of the things I got angry about as a citizen of Rockville. I mean, there used to be a big hole where downtown Rockville is now. I mean, the square down there and what have you, because they dug a big hole and they got so deep and it started filling up with water because there's an underground stream through there. And it was a mess. And here was a town that I go to small towns all over Maryland and Pennsylvania now, and I see how people have preserved and things have built around the town. Frederick is a good example. And lo and behold, instead of saving what we had, with the exception of houses that the historic district people have been defensive and defending that whole idea. But as far as the town was concerned, I lost a good friend when the pub was run out of town here. It was just one of those things that I just thought that we had done the wrong thing of forcing people out. Now, some of the things we moved out of town I thought was a good idea. The car dealership, the Chevrolet dealership in town, and moving that out on 355 was a good move. It was good for the dealership, it was good for the city. And getting that space, and right down there in that intersection of North Washington and Middle Lane, that is a good intersection now. And a good financial investment, but it wasn't then. It was a hole in the ground. And so we did not work as a real group of leaders in pulling that together. Some of us knew what needed to be done, but there was a lot of this business, well, we're a small town, we want to keep the small town interest and blah, 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 blah. Well, hey, you allowed the small town to be torn down and thrown away. What do you have left? And we didn't have much left to work with. Now, fortunately, the old courthouse and the old post office, which I'm happy to hear is going to be the new police headquarters, we did save those, but because they were something that would have been a terrible mistake if anyone had touched them early on. But they tore down the old theater or drugstore, furniture store, the whole center of town was ripped out. It's not the same town. I mean, even the demographics are not the same. But the city is, I think, providing for the community what the community wants. And that's what I think good government's all about, is not doing everything that the community wants, because it's not always right. But if you explain to the people in the community, hey, this is not a good idea, but here's how we can make it a good idea, and then sell that, then you've got something going for you. I have a lot of respect for the people that have done the things that are here right now, because I never thought I would ever see it. I was convinced that it was broken and it may never be fixed. So the long way from where we were when I moved to the Eastern Shore. So I see nothing but positive things. But I always remember one phrase that a professor of mine used to tell us every time that we went to his class. He was a multimillionaire that paid the University of Baltimore what they should have been paying him to teach there. But he didn't have a degree. But he was a self-made businessman, multimillionaire, introduction to business. And he said, he'd always say, if you learn nothing else in my class the whole time you're here, I want you all to know that there ain't no free lunch. And I've heard that so many times that it just automatically clicks in my mind. When someone wants something for nothing, look out. And that's what governments have a tendency to do. They want to do everything for everyone, but they never figure out who's going to pay for it. And that blows my mind. So the schooling, most valuable thing I learned in school, there ain't no free lunch. One last thing I'd like to say to you. I love driving up 355, where Beers Mill and 355, Rockville Pike, where the triangle is there, where the flag's up there. Helen and I dreamed up the idea of raising the flag in Rockville. That little piece of ground, which is a park now, as you well know, there were things about it that no one really wanted to come to grips with. So we made it a park, and we thought it was an ideal place for a flagpole. I mean, some of us were patriotic. And so we didn't take city money. We went out to the community, the residents, the businesses, and we raised all the money for putting that thing up. And the American Legion takes care of the flag. That's their duty, not just in Rockville, but any place in the country. And we raised the flag. And that Hummer's still up there. And I really, there's a sense of pride in that for two reasons. I served my country for 30-some years, and I served Rockville for about 11 or 12 years. And that's one of my symbols.
Steve Van Grack served as mayor of Rockville from 1985 to 1987. A newcomer to Rockville elected office, Van Grack brought his own set of priorities and ideals to help make city government more inclusive and transparent.
In terms of one of the significant accomplishments is we brought in a lot of people into city government that hadn't been there before. We did it through the election process, and we'll talk about that later, doing away with the dual registration system. But there were also controversial aspects. I appointed the first gay and lesbian person to a board and commission in the city. It was controversial at the time. The appointments went through, but it was controversial. We increased African American and other minorities to not just boards and commissions, chairman of the planning commission. So we really reached out to people, and that it was different. The city of Rockville was always a great city, but they needed a little movement in some directions, and I like to think that I was at the forefront of that.
So would you say that you kind of shook things up at City Hall?
No question I shook things up, for the better in many instances, and sometimes not for the better.
Can you relate the story to us about you running down the pike?
Well, Rockville Pike, that's a lot of people remember my campaign when I ran down Rockville Pike and beat a car. And what happened was we began the race and there were 3 cars, a lot of press, because we told people a candidate for mayor is going to run down Rockville Pike to show how horrible it was to go down the pike, and was going to try to beat the traffic. And I tell the story that we tried it several times, and I was a pretty decent runner. I could run a 7-minute mile. That's not great. But we couldn't beat the traffic. And on the day in question, we ran down Rockville Pike, and we were preparing for a press conference afterwards to say that even though I lost to the car, I was so close, it still shows how bad the traffic was. And with a stroke of luck, just as we getting to Halpine, there was a Shell station right at the end of the city line, and a gas truck was pulling into the station, blocked the traffic, and I ran past all the press cars. So I beat the traffic. And that became the story. But at the time, Rockville Pike was a problem. As I told the press at that time, there weren't even sidewalks all the way down Rockville Pike. The city had talked about a moratorium and down zoning Rockville Pike. There was difficult pedestrian crossing from the east side to the west side of the pike. These were all issues that I brought to a highlight, and we didn't solve all of them, but we worked on them. And it was really a reflection that the way the city was doing business just wasn't the best.
How would you say the pike is doing today?
Well, the pike is doing better. I like this new Rockville Pike plan. It's a good plan. It makes sense. I went to a whole lot of those meetings a little over a year ago when they were first putting it together. I like the concepts of the roads to the side of the pike. I like the way they're rezoning it. It's still got some obstacles, but I think it's a good plan. It makes a lot of sense.
Can you tell us a little bit more about how you came to public office? You were in the private sector, and that was kind of rare to not have any experience on the council or anything. How was that transitioning to mayor of the city?
I had been a little involved in the city. I was in the Neighborhood Watch program, got me involved in the city when we first moved here in '77. And I had served, we were working on some zoning issues in terms of other aspects of the city where they were going to put a big complexes. So I was starting to get involved, but I wasn't deeply involved in the city. And what happened was the city went through a tough time. And I said, well, this is a time for somebody to come in and make some changes. And so I started to talk to people and started to organize. I had been involved in Democratic politics for a long time. I had managed a lot of campaigns and felt this was my hometown and I was going to seek the office of mayor. Some people thought I was nuts. Some of them were right, but in any event, I won. Baseball's, Mickey Mantle, Willie Mays, Duke Snyder, Pete Rose, Mark McGuire, Cal Ripken wrote a personalized, Alex Rodriguez, Yogi Berra, Warren Spahn, just great players. Those are fun over the years. We have stories about many of these with my kids.
Can you tell us about some of your more challenging moments and then more comical moments? Some of the highs and some of the lows.
Well, the challenging moments, I remember very well. One of the stories that happened, one of the incidents, while I was mayor, the Surgeon General released his report on AIDS. And it was a very strong report. It was new. It almost alarmed the country about this terrible, terrible situation of what AIDS was doing. And as soon as it came out, the mayor and council, and we may not have been unanimous, but it was a strong support, wanted to send the report to every household in the city. And we were, if not the first, one of the first cities in the country to do so. It was controversial because the language in the report was hard. And so we decided to send it out. We sent it out in Rockville Reports because it was no real cost to do so. And I got some letters that talked about what kind of mailings are we sending to the homes of families and children. But it was an important thing to do. We felt strongly about it, and so it's very controversial. So that was one of those instances where you go, I think I did the right thing, or we did the right thing, but took some criticism for it.
Well, I mean, we talk about transparency in government all the time, at City Hall and things like that. I mean, that's as transparent as you can get in terms of not sugarcoating anything, just sending it to the residents.
Well, the language was tough. It was tough language. Mm-hmm. And it also was a new concept, and so people didn't respond super well to it.
I see.
The comical moments, and there are all sorts of, I could go on and some of the things we've done. One of the comical moments was, it was a Sunday morning, and I started getting phone calls from people. They saw on television that Sam Donaldson and David Brinkley on a Sunday morning talk show were talking about politicians, everyone wanted to become president of the United States of America. And Sam Donaldson said, why, every politician, even the mayor of Rockville, Maryland, whomever he or she might be, would want to be president of the United States. And so it started to get some real play, and the press picked it up. And I then wrote a letter to Sam Donaldson and I said to him, I appreciate his support of my candidacy for president. I do not have the intention to run. However, if we could change our situations, if he likes me, I'd rather him move to Rockville where he could vote for me, but I wasn't going to run for president of the United States. And those things just, they fall in your lap. But that was fun. That was one of those cute moments.
How do you think we're doing as a city?
Well, we still have, our city's a great city. We have, and Bill Hanna, who just really died, deserves a ton of the credit for that Research Boulevard corridor and the 270 corridor when it went on to serve in the county council. That's great. Most cities around the country, when I would go to these meetings of all these mayors, would talk about how difficult it is to have economic development. And we would talk about how we had economic development on the corridor, the west side of the city. Our downtown wasn't that well developed, but we had Rockville Pike. But economic development, the primary problem in most cities in America, we had. And it was really great. And what that does in practical terms is it gives more money to the city so that we can be the great city that we are. We have great recreation and parks. Our police department, I'm a cheerleader for the city, I really am. Our police department, we have a police department of 50-some officers in a city of 60,000 people. You have an extra police officer for every 1,000 people. Who can afford to do that? And we have Montgomery County Police too. Great, great city. Great schools, great neighborhoods.
Any plans in the future for you for public office again?
Well, there aren't plans. I mean, I don't, I loved my time in office, and I've done a lot of other things since I was mayor of Rockville that in the public arena that I like and feel very proud of. I don't plan to do it, but you never say no. You never say, I never want to go back. I still talk. I've talked with many of the mayors. I tend to stay out of city politics. I don't get deeply involved, and in so doing, and that's contrary to most of the other mayors. In most elections, most of the other mayors support candidates. I tend to stay out, and I'm able to confer upon the request of the mayor with them. The present mayor and I talk every couple weeks, and at least give them my advice, whether it's good or bad. They like to talk about these things. So I still love the city, and I'm not going out and running for office, but to say I wouldn't do anything, that's not right also.
What is your hope for Rockville as we move forward for the future?
Well, Rockville's still a great place. It's still a great city. You can't take that away from it. My hope is that they continue to balance economic development with good preservation of our neighborhoods. That is the core of the city. You drive around the city, you see wonderful neighborhoods. They're well kept. I think that's important. I'm a little concerned over some of the lack of civility on the mayor and council. There should be niceness, even if you disagree. And we had big disagreements when I was mayor, and it was a great council, a wonderful council. You still have to be civil about what you're talking about, not take these things personally.
Steve, what are you up to now?
Well, now I'm a lawyer. I'm a practicing lawyer. I enjoy, I really love the practice of law. I love being a lawyer. I'm a trial lawyer. I represent people. I do a lot of pro bono stuff, which has been a very important part of my practice. I used to run a big firm. I ran a big firm in the city for 27 years. I was the managing partner, and running a law firm was not as much fun as being a lawyer. And so 3 years ago, I left my firm, and I say I'm just a lawyer now. I love what I do. My 3 sons are lawyers. My 4 kids all live locally. I've got a grandson. I've got a pretty good life, and I live in a pretty good city. So I like what I do. And I still do some public service.
Doug Duncan was 26 when he was elected to Rockville City Council in the 1980s. He then went on to be mayor of Rockville for 3 terms, and then was elected as Montgomery County executive. The former mayor sat down with us in front of City Hall to talk about his time as mayor of Rockville.
Well, Doug, thank you so much for joining us for this special on former mayors of Rockville.
Sure. Happy to be here. Happy to help my hometown.
And we wanted to talk to you about, you were one of the youngest council members elected when you joined the council, and wanted to ask you, what made you decide to get into public office?
Well, I've always had an interest in public service, and I knew growing up that I would be doing something in public service. I was very shy as a child, so I wasn't sure it would be elected office. So I helped Charlie Gilchrist get elected county executive in 1978, and I said, you know, I'd like to try elected office and see if I like it, if I'm any good at it. And I ran for Rockville City Council in 1982, got elected and loved it. You know, growing up, my mom was the one who sort of instilled this sort of public service calling. She always told us that the religious service is the highest calling, public service is the next, and I just knew I'd do something in public service with my life.
Can you talk about some of your fondest memories during your tenure as mayor of Rockville?
Well, we went through a lot of change when I was mayor, and Rockville's just a great town. I mean, I grew up here, I've stayed here to raise my family here. It's a great place to live, and I wanted to give back some. And when I was on the Rockville City Council, things were going well, and then I decided I want to run for mayor. And when I became mayor, things changed quite a bit. All of a sudden, you know, when you're on the city council, people say, what issues did you study? What bills did you pass? When you're mayor, even though you're the chairman of the council and have a vote like all the other council members, people look at you differently. They say, what'd you get done? So I developed this tremendous sense of urgency when I became mayor, and clearly one of the biggest things we had to do was figure out what to do with downtown Rockville and the old Rockville Mall. And we put up a picture assembly of all the former mayors in Rockville's history. It was actually a lovely thing, but we had all the living former mayors come back. And what struck me, we had mayors back from the 1950s. So Dick Osepian was here, Alice Green. What struck me was that every one of these mayors from the 1950s to the present day, to the 1990s when I was mayor, late 80s and 90s, everyone talked about downtown Rockville. And the mayors before the mall talked about what a mess the old downtown was and how they needed to tear it down and build something new. And then the mayors after the mall talked about what a mess the mall was and what a failure it was from the day it opened and how we needed to do something to fix downtown Rockville. So it really had been the sore spot for years and years and years. And you know, I put together a plan to basically tear down the old mall and start over. It wasn't working. We went through a renovation of it. That didn't work. And finally we said, let's just tear it down. So we partnered with the state and the county and the city, got $18 million to help tear down the mall and sort of create the space for a new downtown, which is what we're seeing today. And it was very controversial. I mean, we had some people who argued against tearing down the mall, but it was just an eyesore. It really blighted this town for decades. And I think that's one of the things I'm most proud of, was getting that torn down and creating the opening for new development and a new town center, which we have today.
And what do you think of downtown Rockville today? I mean, are you happy with the way it turned out?
I think it's great. It's you know, I live 3 blocks from it, so we're there all the time. It's really a nice place to be. It needs some more housing. It needs more to make it a true downtown, but it's off to a great start. I just hope that we get the other things before some of the shops in there have to move out. I am a little worried about it, but it's got sort of everything in place. We just need to finish it, and the mayor and council needs to be strong in making sure it gets done.
What about, can you talk about some of your more challenging moments as mayor?
Well, when I first ran for the council, it really was on an affordable housing platform. I mean, here I am. I'm a kid who grew up in Rockville, grew up in Twin Brook, and couldn't afford to buy a house in my hometown, and it was really frustrating. So I said, we got to do more for affordable housing in Rockville to help those people who grew up here stay here. So we tore down the old Maryville School, had some housing, affordable housing built there. We did an awful lot to get more affordable housing in the city, and it's one thing that I'm very proud of. It's always a challenge though, because people tend to view when you say affordable housing, it's really workforce housing, but they view it as something entirely different, and it's something that they can be afraid of. So that was a challenge of getting through that. Getting the old downtown torn down was a real challenge, and really what I tried to do was build a sense of community in the city. I mean, Rockville is a great town. It has a great sense of community, and people really feel the Rockville spirit when they live here. But what was missing was we didn't have a strong downtown. We didn't really have any downtown. And the other thing I think that's essential to a successful community is a good high school. And Richard Montgomery was going through tremendous problems. They were talking about shutting it down. We had a lot of fights with the school board, a lot of discussion and activities with the school board to keep Richard Montgomery there. And then, so they finally decided to make it an international baccalaureate school, which transformed it pretty much overnight. And now it's one of the strongest schools in the county. But, 30 years ago, they were talking about shutting down Richard Montgomery, which, a high school right next to our downtown with a failed downtown would not have been good for the city. So we worked very hard in education, worked very hard in the downtown. And a lot of the things that we did were really designed to get people downtown. Hometown Holidays was started when I was mayor because we said we need to give people an excuse to come downtown and see what's there, see what's changing, see how things are different now, and how they're we've turned the corner and we're getting better. And it's really taken off. I mean, it's a great weekend, great activity for lots of people, not just from Rockville, but from all over the region. And it's something I'm very proud of. So we did that. The banners we started when I was mayor, again, just to provide some color, provide some things in downtown Rockville that weren't there because it just hadn't clicked yet. So
I just wanted to get your thoughts on how you've seen Rockville change and how you think the city government is doing, if they're doing a good job or not of managing the changing dynamic in Rockville.
Well, we're still focused on the downtown. I mean, that's still a problem for the mayor and council. And we used to say that Rockville's town center was cursed. We could never get anything work there, but they got a great project there now, and there's still challenges ahead. So that's going to consume a lot of the mayor and council's time over the years. It's, one thing I'm glad to see is that our population growth has increased quite a bit. For a long time, we were stuck at around 43,000 people. Had tremendous growth in the 50s and 60s, and then from then on, we sort of stayed the same. We were getting more houses built, but the people per household were shrinking, or the numbers of people per household were shrinking. So we're now seeing the population growth. The city changed dramatically when we went west of 270, when we got the King Farm in as part of the city. And I think that's added a lot. The more residents, I think, make it a more vibrant city. It certainly provides more support for the downtown. And there's some, wonderful housing communities and wonderful neighborhoods in the city that weren't here 30, 40 years ago. So I think that's wonderful too.
We're going into an election year for the mayor and council. Any advice for anyone who's thinking about running or maybe even for this current council?
It's interesting. I was always a fan of the 2-year term because I thought we're small enough where you can do that every 2 years. It doesn't become onerous. It's not like running for Congress where you have to raise millions of dollars and spend all your time campaigning and raising money. I'm actually starting to lean a little more towards staggered terms and 4-year terms the way they have in Gaithersburg. I think it works for them, and I think it could work a little bit here. We need stability in the mayor and council, that they know that the decisions they make, they can see implemented, and we can carry things out. It's, if you want to get the right kind of growth in the city and see the town center and other areas flourish, you've got to have that stability there in your elected leadership. So I would actually support a 4-year term, where I would never have said that before, but just in looking at how the city has changed and how the politics has changed because of that, I think a 4-year term would be more helpful.
In speaking with some of the other former mayors, they talked about back in the 80s and 90s, you ran as a team, a slate of for the council, and actually Jim Coyle was talking about how that seemed to work better because you were with people who maybe you didn't always agree with, but you were able to maybe get more things done.
Well, it worked very well, and I know slates sometimes have a bad connotation to them, but for us it worked very well. It was sort of and it dates back to Rockville's good government days in the 1950s, where sort of the reformers swept into office, and you created these slates of people, a mayor and council candidates to run, who ran on a similar platform. So you knew what they wanted to do, and therefore you had cohesion going into your term. and you can get things done more quickly. Now with everybody's independent, it's you don't have they have to figure out where each other's coming from in the term, and it takes a little too long, and you can't get things done as quickly. And when you have a 2-year term, as we had, you have to move quickly to make things happen. So I like the slates. I think I think it helps the city, it helps the voter in determining who to vote for, and it helps run the government of the city much better. And I'm a big fan of the council manager form of government here. I mean, the professional city manager is very important for Rockville. It's we're known across the country for having great city management, and we need to make sure that continues, and we support that.
After you left as mayor of Rockville, you went on to become county executive of Montgomery County. What type of perspective did that give you, coming from the city and then in working, leading the county? I mean, in terms of how Rockville fits in. A lot of people say, oh, there's double government because you have Rockville and then you have the county. What were you able? Was there anything surprising while you were in office as county executive?
Actually, the one surprising thing as county executive was the amount of press attention I got. Whereas the mayor of Rockville, the Gazette paid attention to you, and back then we had the Chronicle and the Potomac Almanac and other small papers. But all of a sudden, when you're county executive, it's the Washington Post that's paying attention to what you're doing. So it was, I would not have guessed that within my first week in office, I would have been on the front page of the Post like 3 times or something. I mean, just a lot of press coverage. That really was the only thing that was different for me, because really the only difference between mayor of Rockville and county executive, well, one, the county executive is full time, but 2 is it's just bigger. The numbers are bigger, the population's bigger, the geographic size is bigger, the budget's bigger, but you're dealing with the exact same issues you dealt with as mayor of Rockville as you do as county executive. So being mayor was great preparation. I think I'm the only. Yeah, I am the only county executive who was a mayor, and I think that prepared me for the job of county executive better than any other county executive when they came into office. And it helped me make decisions more quickly, certainly in terms of Silver Spring and some of the redevelopment, the town center development around the county. My experience working in the downtown of Rockville helped me quite a bit with that.
How do you think the city's relationship is now with the county?
It's actually one of the things I'm worried about. I'm worried about the relations the city has with other jurisdictions, other areas, with the county government, with the state of Maryland, with the county schools. We need to do a better job of being part of the county. Rockville needs to do a better job of being part of the county and reaching out and being a partner with these other agencies in making things happen. I mean, there's a lot of challenges facing this community, and Rockville is not an island. We are the county seat of a much bigger community. We're a very important part of that community, and I think we need to play our role. Rockville used to be the leader in many things, in human rights, in the arts, in a lot of things, in fair housing. Rockville was the leader and set the tone for the county, and now we're not seeing as much of that, and I'd like to see Rockville reclaim some of that leadership role. But to do that, they've got to establish those relationships with these other agencies. That's been missing. It's not the fault of this mayor and council. I think it's something that happened over time, and it needs to be repaired.
Do you have any plans for future public office?
You never know. I'm happy to help the mayor and council. I'm certainly not going to run for mayor and council of Rockville. I still love it, though. I mean, I love politics, I love public service, and I love Rockville. It's such a great place, and I just want to see it do the best that it can.
Anything else you'd like to add about Rockville or your time as mayor?
No, I mean, one of the things that I loved about Rockville was the closeness of it, that you really got to know people in their neighborhoods, you got to experience neighborhood life, and there's a real familiarity with the elected officials here and the residents of the community. You didn't have that as much in the county because there were just so many more residents of the county. And it's really, I always said that being mayor of your hometown is like the perfect job, and everybody should be mayor for a day just to get that feeling of pride in the place where you live and you work.